no excitement because I am practical enough to recognize that the real work actually begins from today. The vision for me, what is fundamental and significant for me is that even though we have a largely watered down version of the previous editions and an expanded, framing of what the marginalizations or who the marginalized groups are. So it goes beyond just women, and the removal of women as a primary reference in the bill to other disadvantaged, underrepresented groups, even though the original intendment was typically a women's bill, because that is where the gaps, the historical gaps have been, to the extent that a parliament, a National Assembly, has finally at least agreed that such a law is important to exist, is a good starting point for me. So it's a good first step that the recognition has happened, albeit there are existing challenges and appreciation with the concepts and ideologies and the justifications for a women's bill. And some express fear that are we not creating a society where into the near future men will become disadvantaged. This is why I think that one of the major things we should do almost as at now, and I'll do a bit of it now in terms of the public education, is to situate the conceptual understanding of the mandate, okay, of what the law intends to achieve. And I'm happy where you started. You started off giving us the rare example of University of Ghana, my alma mater. And that is exactly the reason why it is justified to have it. You would know that University of Ghana has had affirmative action policies for a long time now to ensure that persons or students from disadvantaged communities get entrance, women and girls get entrance. But for that affirmative action, we wouldn't have had the numbers of females coming into the university as we currently have, or the numbers of persons of disability who have come into the university as we currently have, or the numbers of students from across some of our communities which are really
Would you say you are an outlier? I saw you in University of Ghana.
Yes.
From level 100.
Yes.
You took advantage of all the opportunities you had.
Yes, I did.
And we all knew you on campus
Yes.
for advocacy work on Radio Universe and the rest of them. There was nothing that stopped you from being who you wanted to be.
But today I was on Metro television, and that's one of the issues we need to address, the narrative that what is stopping people. I am an outlier because I had opportunities, that built my confidence. You talked about Radio Universe. I went to Holy Child School, and I am an outlier because my father left Upper West to come to the South to hustle. My grandmother had not sat in the classroom before, but she took my mom to school in Tamale when she was there. My mom started school in Tamale. My grandmother, who had never been to school, took my mother to school. And today, see where I am. So had my dad not come, had my dad not invested in education, as a Muslim man, because traditionally we all know some of the considerations around the issues of girl-child education, I wouldn't be here. And so my story could have been the story of thousands more Shamimas had they had similar opportunities. So when we come into even the university, feeling you always sometimes, a space can make you feel comfortable and confident to want to express yourself, or you could feel like what do they call this thing? Like you are an outcast of some sort. And those self-censoring things, which require interventions in confidence building, public speaking. And I was lucky because I started Radio Universe. Until Radio Universe, I didn't know I had any skills to be on radio. But I worked myself into Radio Universe because Alhaji Sadiq came to speak to us at orientation. And these are the reasons why representation is such a very powerful tool to me, because I saw him as a Muslim coming to speak to us. I felt confident to walk to Radio Universe immediately after that session. When we closed, I felt confident to walk to Radio Universe and to ask, what are the modalities to volunteer here? And I was asked to go and write a letter and come, which I did. It is important for people to see people who look like them, who come from similar backgrounds as them, in positions of power and influence. When we went to Tamale, because of radio, the kinds of stories that have emerged singularly, because I decided to come and sit on radio and TV and speak. The stories of young Muslim girls who today aspire to be in journalism. Go to GIJ and see the numbers of young Muslim girls who have come. Some write to me because they say they saw me and they knew that they also could. So we must never underestimate the power of representation and optics. It matters. And so the University of Ghana is a good example of how when opportunity is given and opportunity is taken, I know opportunity needs to be given, but it also has to be taken. And when opportunity is given, yes, competence would always trump any other thing. And this is not talking about appointing women who are not competent. So we need to understand that the entire equality debate, and I have some slides I will show, after if you give me the time,
right,
is not a disadvantage to men, neither is it a disadvantage to men's progress. But it is a call for all of us to see how do we redistribute our collective opportunities, our collective resources, so that we can give meaning to our constitution, which envisages a society of non-discrimination on the basis of sex, on the basis of class, on the basis of religion, on the basis of any other, avenues of discriminations. The Constitution sees all of us as bona fide members of a society who should have access to our shared, resources and should be able to aspire to be in any space whatsoever.
So you've just been listening to Sheila Minka-Premo. Sheila Minka-Premo is a senior lawyer, and she's lawyer and convener, Affirmative Action Bill Coalition. You just also heard Shamima Muslim, who is a member of the NDC Communications team and a gender activist. Gender activists used to lead. Now the communication comes in. So let me do this. I've seen one of the men putting their hand up. I'm sorry, you're not going to speak yet. Oh. I'll take a quick break. When I return,
you see the balance.
When I return, Sheila will take us through her favorite 3 provisions. Shamima will do the same before we hear from the men. And the men will speak very briefly. We'll be right back. Welcome back. A news file is brought to you by Bank of Africa. As strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneur leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex tanks, it's strong, it's tough. Flamingo paints, simply superior. Yes, so Sheila, let's hear what will be your favorite 3 provisions of this act.
Okay, so there's a provision which deals with governance and decision making in the public service, and it indicates that the government is to ensure progressive, equitable representation of women in public office, in governance and decision making. So it mentions, ministerial positions, at the Council of State, independent constitutional bodies, governing bodies of state institutions, public service, district assemblies. So they're supposed to be guided by the provisions of this act.
Yeah.
So the governing bodies of these institutions are supposed to ensure that in filling vacancies for positions of authority and decision making in these institutions, gender is taken into consideration. My other one too is gender budgeting. So he says that all the relevant institutions, when they are budgeting, they should consciously ensure that they consider both the needs of men and women when making their budgets to ensure that their needs are addressed. Then gender equality also in private sector. I find it also very interesting. it says that within private sector institutions, they're supposed to have gender policies so that they consciously think about gender issues when they are employing, when they are promoting, when they're doing the rest
And there's incentive for that, for private sector.
For that. I find it very interesting. So there are incentives for that, which is there are some tax incentives, as well as for those who apply for government contracts, etc. They have to have what we call a gender compliance certificate, which is supposed to be issued once annually. You are complying with it. So I find these clauses very interesting. Okay.
The portion about your first one about progressive and ensure, that kind of balance, as I mentioned earlier, it's already in the Constitution anyway, and it's not being complied with. So this time, if the state doesn't comply with it, what happens?
So basically, there are targets at the back. So the way this law is structured is not like once it starts working, pam, you hit 50%.
Okay.
It is you walk the equity road until you get to equality, which is the benchmark. And because the Constitution talks about getting a balance, once it reaches equality, the idea is that the program in place will stop.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's not one of those perpetual ones where eventually they would say that women will come and overtake men. No, once there's balance, it stops.
Okay.
So there's the target, it starts from 30%. I think during the review, first it was 30, 40, then we'll hit by 2030, where the UN says the Sustainable Development Goals says that you should have reached parity, then it will stop. During the changes it went through in Parliament, I think they changed it's from 30 to 35, and it's sort of gradual. So the idea is progressive. That is how it's been designed as.
Before Shamima comes in...
Sorry,
okay, go ahead.
Answer your question.
Go ahead.
So if they don't comply, what happens? First of all, the body that has been set up, reports can be made to them.
Okay.
So they take investigations and to come up with reports and to insist, to push, to order a particular institution to ensure compliance. If that fails, or if an individual is directly affected, they can go to SHRAJ to lodge a complaint. If it's labor-related, they can go to the National Labour Commission. Then whoever is not satisfied with the outcome on any of these institutions can go to the courts, the high courts, to initiate an action.
We remember one of the issues that actually delayed this, the passage, was the thorny issue of cohabitation. Has it been resolved?
Cohabitation has nothing to do with this law.
Okay.
Totally nothing to do with this law.
Okay.
Spousal rights.
Cohabitation was in
under spousal rights.
Of
correct, spousal rights.
So cohabitation has nothing.
Thank you very much. Yes. Right, Shamima, your favorite.
Yeah, because already we have a lot of work to do to try and get, so for me, the areas for for moving forward that we must look at the people, the structures, and the systems, okay? The people are all the stakeholders that would need to come on the same page to ensure that we get a full operationalization of the law, the structures that on which, the various provisions are to be activated, and the systems that will ensure compliance, monitoring, evaluation, and implementing the system of rewards. So I do like the system of rewards, but it looks like the law is quite heavy on punitive sanctions as against more rewards. The entire spirit is like a moral suasion sort of, but we need to find ways of enforcing it beyond just morally swaying people and actors to take decisions, because there's the science to the benefits of a more equitable society where all of its members, men, women, able, disabled, are all, contributing beyond their minimum. One of the areas worth applauding for me, again, is the strategies for gender equality in relation to public services, including periodically updating directory of qualified women from which appointments should be made. And that's it, I think, in clause 3 and the 4th schedule. One of the major things we always hear, where are the women? Where are the women? So the women are there. This directory will be very helpful. Even in the media, you ask when we complain about panels that are male-dominated, we'll get a pushback that we don't find the women. So we need such a directory of qualified women. We need various public institutions to periodically publicize spaces where glass ceilings, opportunities for glass ceilings to be broken. We want to break glass ceilings, and we need to have the audits of organizations to see where they are in terms of the inclusion and diversity agenda, whether it's the security agencies, judiciary, parliament, Parliament, the provisions around, politics.
The judiciary is another place where you have a great number of women.
So you must always ask why. The why question is very curious for us to amplify.
I think we understand that
competence.
It is Georgina Wood.
They have a gender strategy.
And they have a gender strategy.
I was part of the team that helped them.
All right.
2011.
Okay.
So I think, Angela, what we have to do is to highlight these success stories so the citizens will understand what benefits we stand to gain when women are in these, kinds of positions and in spaces. So that is a very important provision to have. Also, the requirement for Public Services Commission to equip women for promotion. I spoke about appointment, promotions, and elections. One of the ways to bridge the gap, if we allow organic growth, this is where we are. The World Economic Forum says it will take us 135 years to bridge the gender pay gap. 135 years. Even with all these interventions, all these, demands and laws and, agreements we are ratifying. Ghana has ratified so many international conventions around the issues of gender equality, but we are so consumed with names and framing that we even think that equality, there's a misconception about the meaning of equality that makes people quite sensitive to the use of it, and we are pushing to call the law the Gender Equity Bill. If we understood that equality at its base, at its foundation, is about opportunities, equality of opportunities, and removing barriers to participation, we wouldn't think that it is women coming to lord it over men or women taking over their positions. So the ways in which we can bridge the gap through affirmative action instrument is either by making appointments of women. And when you come to the politics, which is the weaker aspect of this law, we have an executive presidency. I have heard you talk about reviewing the Constitution to at least roll back some of the powers of the president. He has such wide-ranging appointive powers. So if you have wide-ranging appointive powers, it means you can appoint qualified women into positions, which is why some of us were quite disappointed when he went to Canada and said that Ghanaian women hadn't shown enough dynamism. Today I heard from Gloria that as a remedial action, the manifesto committee of their party insisted chairs and co-chairs to be women. It's good because of the backlash that President Akufo-Addo got by telling us that Ghanaian women hadn't shown enough dynamism. Who is more dynamic in this space than Ghanaian women? So I think he must situate the implementation at the office of the presidency to give it backing and ensure that at least the structures that are needed, because there would be some expense to the public purse. But this is good expense because the bottom line would eventually. So this is what I wanted to talk about if there is time to talk about it. But the first one, because I think we should just pictorially understand what this entire inequality, equity thing
I need you to run through it quickly.
Yes, quickly. So then please use the first one, okay? Otherwise, just leave it. You see, the tree, you can come back to that other one because I won't have time to do. The tree is the systems. Okay. The systems, the structures, and those are the systemic barriers to participation. And here it's the legal barriers, the institutional barriers, the cultural policy, even administrative barriers. So you would see that there's a system that is skewed to the advantage of some members of the society, okay, even though the fruits are there, yes, even though, and physiologically can also represent so many other things, okay, just see it at that. So this portends an unequal situation where someone has access to our collective resources and opportunities and others are disadvantaged. If you come to the equality debate, after seeing these systemic imbalances in our society where women's participation, when people with disability participation, where even regional and other ethnic balance issues come at play, the conversations are around how do we make access to our collective opportunities more equal. Okay. So intervention comes, let's give everybody an equal playing field. So our constitution says no discrimination. And yet, so even though we have non-discriminatory policies, what do we see from the third equity level? We see that people are still unable to access because of their peculiar challenges. And so equity says that no, there are real barriers to participation. How do we bridge the barriers? So what do? You recognize those that are in need of more support. So if there are few women representation, how do we increase the numbers?
Okay.
Through an affirmative action, instrument. So you would see in the third picture on equity that we are now trying to balance the equation based off on our individual peculiarities and challenges. But the real ideal situation is a recognition of the problem, the root cause of the problem, which are the systemic challenges that I spoke to you earlier. When we align the structure of our society, where truly every member of the society is able to access public goods equally, people with disability can have access to this story building because there's an disability access. These are real, germane, sensitive issues that create a freer and fair society. And at the ideal stage, when we have liberation, there are no barriers. We can all participate fully and effectively, and that is what this affirmative action
very much.
would achieve.
Bobby,